Hi there, in this quick video I'm going to show you how to set up an electronic waiver very quickly. And I'm going to actually explain it a couple times, and then however tech savvy you are, you'll get it and you can tune out, or you can watch the whole video and learn more advanced topics. So on the back end of Swift Cloud, this is explanation number one, the super quick version. And then I'll go into a little more detail. On the actual back end, we have a document editor that looks like the older version of WordPress. It's really pretty straightforward. It's a typical text editor. And in it, we have shortcodes right up here. Now, these shortcodes, here's an example of one right here, Swift email. And then the actual signature field is right here, Swift signature required medium. So what that does is on the front end, that creates the actual field for the signature field. And here's the actual signature pad, right? If I wanted to, I could type in John Doe, right? Get the idea. I can choose my font, select that, go from there. I guess we should probably center that, but you get the idea. So if you understand that concept, then you just need to know where to create docs, which is here. Go to Drive. You can go to the Drive and click on Add New right here. Just go Add New doc. You could put it into a folder if you wanted to, something like that. We also have a wizard, and on the wizard page, it will ask you some setup information for your company, and then it'll help you get set up. It'll look something like this. You can upload a Word file, and then we'll convert it into an actual HTML. You're still going to have to replace the underlines with shortcodes, but you get the idea. You can also start from a template, or you can just start fresh, start a new doc here. So that's explanation number one. Let me dive into a little bit more details. So here's how it came to me from the client, right? They had it in some other text editor format. And you'll notice that on the actual doc, you've got these underlined portions. And on old school paper and pen, that's typically how things were edited and filled out and signed, right? So what you'll need to do is get this into some format that you can copy and paste. So you could do that directly from a PDF. I think Google, will allow you to do that. You can also click open with Google Docs if you're using Google Cloud or something like that. If you've got the original source material in, let's say, Microsoft Word, for example, any of these type of systems that you can copy and paste from will do the trick. So once it's in a format like this, then we're just going to hit Control A for select all, Control C, and we're going to get into the back end of Swift Cloud, create a new doc, and basically start editing. So here we can just add a new doc, and it's going to look something like this in just a moment. And then what we do is just format it. So that was the 1 minute, 2 minute, very quick overview. Now let me back up a little bit and take a deeper dive into what you see. So first things first is we want your logo and colors to be on the document. So what I should do, and I'll do after this video, is actually get the background here. So what I should do is pull out this background image out of the CSS and get this nice kind of bluish gradient, or do a screen capture and then pull out the blue bar, and then that way we have it kind of matching. We want it to match your look and feel as closely as possible, and ultimately we'll even map the URL, right? So this could be secure.your, so all of your signatures could happen on secure.yourwebsite.com. So what we'll do is just right-click, save the image as, and then what you want to do is go into the profile page, which you can get to down here once you're logged in. Click Edit Profile. We'll go down here to the Appearance and Styling section, and then Branding and Cosmetics. Make sure that this is on, and then you can start to set things here. So you could even change this to Image and Color, right? And then I could define the background image like so, and select that. I'll do that later. So what we'll do is we'll just leave it as a solid color for the moment, just so you can kind of get the idea. We do also allow Google Tags. So for those who are tech savvy or know what that is, if they want to track a sales funnel, let's say, or more advanced events and find out how many people signed an event, then we will fire your Google Tags ID, as long as you just have to put in your tag ID number, right, into this space. And from within that, Google Tags can fire Facebook or Google Analytics. You can fire a lot of different events on different events through the container. So next, let's dive into a little bit more details on the back end of the actual document. So here is the wizard that you would see typically if you're a new user signing up. It's going to ask for your your website URL. So we could put in something like that. And as soon as you do, it's going to strip that off. Clients. Now, if you're a chiropractor, you might change that to patient. If you're a mortgage lender, you might change that to borrower. If you are a teacher, you might change that to student. You get the idea. What we need to know is who do you call your clients, right? And we're going to use that for certain functions. So in this case, we want to give it a user, choose a username. We don't want .com. Obviously, that's not very useful. So change it to something like this. And that's going to create your URL. So that's maybe something comparable to like a Twitter handle or a Facebook username or something like that. It does have to be unique globally. And then you can later map things using CNAME mapping for those who are tech savvy to this URL if you wanted to. Legal address, that's required for spam compliance. We're going to send the signer a copy of the document that they sign. We'll also have certain marketing functions if you wanted to, or a sequence of events. You could do a sequence of, something out on day 0, on day 7, on day 24, or 14, or 21, or something like that if you wanted to through the system. So we do increasingly have more functions that require mailing. We're also in beta, early stage beta on our task management system, which would email people updates and stuff like that. So for various emails that we send out on your behalf, legally speaking, we must have your physical mailing address. It's okay if it's a PO box or something, but it does need to be there legally for US legal compliance. I don't know about European, that's really up to you. So in this case, main phone, we use that really for lookup and for branding and stuff like that. Certain e-commerce functions, then that might have that for sales functions. So once you hit save, this section is going to disappear. Then you can kind of proceed and either make a new doc, or you can start from a template and just pick out a waiver, and then you could modify it, or you could upload your document. We've also got some various options here and kind of a suggested checklist of what to do with the document once you're there. We're going to go ahead and close this. Once you do, it will take you to the document, whatever document you have created, which will look something like this, the actual backend. So once you have your document in a copy and pastable format, then we want to format a little bit, and like any major editor, you've got some controls here over the font and stuff like that, alignment. It's pretty straightforward. In terms of the shortcodes, there you'll just want to play with this on your own. Be advised that email is required because we're going to send the signer a copy, and therefore we have to know who that is. Now, if you're using high-speed mode, that was designed originally for, let's say, a water park who needed 1,000 signatures per day. There, we don't require an email because we don't email out a PDF to them by default. We will generate a PDF if you need one on an as-needed basis. So we store the signature data along with the version. So if you change the document, we know that, and we merge the data back into the old document. The system does track all that stuff very rigorously. We have to be ready to go to court at any time for any client, and we've got your back. That's what you're paying us for. So we take this stuff extremely seriously, and we have a very extensive audit trail, not all of which is public, involving cookie tracking and browser profiling and IP address and lots of really technical data well beyond the scope. So actually electronic signature is not only legally binding, it's frankly much, much more difficult than a paper and pen signature. To forge a paper and pen signature, all you need is the willingness to do so and a pen and maybe 10 minutes of practice. But most importantly is the form and the moral disposition. In order to forge an electronic signature using our platform, that would be extremely, extremely difficult and probably require state-level actors to have the ability to do things like IP tunneling and stuff like that. So nonetheless, I digress. Let's dive into the actual waiver signature. So you've got a bunch of different options. In terms of the shortcodes, you don't have to remember that. It's really in the shortcodes editor. So we have things like name. In this case, we want name. So we've got event name. We've got the employee name. In this case, it is for like a company picnic, I think it is, something like that. So we've got employee name. So we want name both. Our system will split both fields. We'll split that into first and last name when we store it to the database. And you've got a bunch of different options. You got phone, USA versus EU, that kind of thing, location. You've got a bunch of different options. Additional people, that's kind of critical for things like refer a friend forms, that sort of thing, where we'll actually store everybody into your contact database and then create a relationship between them. Same thing, same idea for company. So company, what we'll do is we'll create a company, an entity and then create a relationship to that entity. We store companies in the same way that we do people, but with some, albeit some different differences in terms of what they can do and even capability. And as we grow, we will have more enterprise features where humans attach to companies, that kind of thing. Form fields, this is if you don't have a reserved system for it, then that's what you're going to use most of the time is form fields. So you've got text box, you've got radio options, circle word, that kind of thing. And I can show you in a different video, really kind of, we can take a deeper dive into that, but the best is just play with it and kind of use your best judgment. Circle word is essentially a checkbox or a radio button. And it's just, so on paper and pen, it would say like, what kind of credit card do you have? Circle the kind of credit card you're using, right? That's what it does, basically. E-signature, here are the actual signature fields. My signature is treated a little bit differently. Dates and times, you've got a lot of different options. You can choose date, you can choose date and time both. You could be US style, right? So we go month, day, year. In Europe, they go day, month, year, right? And most of the rest of the planet. If it's something like, when did you graduate high school? We don't need the exact date, right? In that case, it's just month and year is fine. So for certain things, that might be handy. So we have it as an option there. If you want it to be editable, so in this case, we do want it to be editable. So we've got date, and that's of the event. It's not today's date. It is when is the company picnic happening, right? And so we could pre-fill that if this is for a specific event, but I think that they're using this waiver for multiple events, and therefore we'll make that editable, right? And we could even pre-fill it. We've got a separate video about how to pre-fill. There's a couple different ways to do that. So for sales contracts, typically you'd want to use something called a session, and that's where you could start filling in data about a given client, and it saves it separately as a session. The sessions are also useful for multi-party signature without getting too much into all of these details. If you're, let's say, doing a bulk request for, let's say, 200 people that are going to a company picnic on a specific day, then you could just fill this via URL. You could even fill it programmatically. So if you've got some other let's say a CRM or an email system or something like that, then you could fill this via API or via post or via GET or something like that. So for more information, just contact our team or check out our support systems first, because it's probably been answered and there's probably a video kind of like this one covering that topic. So I digress again. In this case, we've got a bit of information about the signer, right? So we want the user to actually put in their name, right? So in this case, it would be John Doe, something like that. In this case, it pre-filled my email because it has me cookied. I've been emailing this, using this browser for testing, right? So if I wanted to, I could clear this out and sign, something like that. And I could put in company picnic, and we could choose a date. And notice that was a date picker, by the way. So here we've got an option. So in this case, I've chosen it. Other options include a drop down. That's typically used for birth date, but it could be used for anything. Next, once you have the document sort of the way you want, what we need to define is what else is going to happen for the user. In this case, most typically we'll send them somewhere, but we've got a couple different options. If you are getting signatures in person on a tablet in your office, then you'd probably want to set it to kiosk mode, which is going to attempt to suppress, and this is up to the browser, but I think it works with most major browsers, where we'll suppress the autocomplete because we don't want to show information about other clients, right? Something like that. Let's say you're in a dentist office. We don't want to show other patients' information. We just want to be respectful of privacy. So we'll suppress the autocomplete, and then it'll also reset itself after each signature. It'll show you a success message, and then it'll reset itself after something like 10 seconds or 5 seconds. Stay on the page, same idea, but we won't suppress the autocomplete. That's intended for over the web, because if there is a bunch of information about their email and their address and stuff like that that you may well need, then you don't want to suppress autocomplete, and that's why we have it as a separate option, because it'll make things faster for them. Stay on the page, but download a file. That might be typically used for, let's say, a PDF. Let's say you have a $10,000 consulting contract and you want to get a receipt signature first. Say, please sign this to acknowledge receipt, and then we'll download your file to you. Then that's how you could do that. So it could be useful for, let's say, high-end e-commerce, right? Or download even software, something like that. You wanted to let them sign for it first, then that's effectively what that's doing. get forwarded to e-commerce. You've got a couple different options with payments. You could send them directly to payment, or you could send them to payment and then to signature. And in the near future, we'll have signature, we'll have payment within the signature page, where it's sort of a dynamic experience. They could also get forwarded to some other asset, right? If you wanted to daisy chain, let's say, here's your setup file, right? Let's say you're in the website business and somebody signs an initial contract for agreeing to the sale, and then you need a bunch of information in order to set up their contract for them, or set up their project for them. You could send them to another form. And by the way, this system, if you just pull out the signature systems, it'll just convert to a form. Our system will recognize, hey, there's no signature fields within this. It'll get rid of this, right? The actual terms that they're agreeing to, and it'll change this to send form content, something like that. And I think you've got control, some options over the button there. So here in the lower portion of the pink box, we've got an email. We want that to go to them. In this case, we want a copy. So I want to draw your attention to the signature of the doc signed, right? So what the system will do is it'll generate the shortcode just like so, and that'll actually attach the PDF. So this doesn't actually show to the human. What it does, it tells our system, hey, attach a copy of the actual signed PDF. Notice that the system does say Swift first name, because at the time we're writing this, we probably don't know who's going to be signing this. Now, if this is a one-off sales contract, then of course you might, in which case you could greet them by name, but then this isn't going to be useful. It's going to just make more work for yourself if you clone the document. So what we do is we use the variable system, so that's tied to the name system. So in this case, I've typed in John Doe, and the system has in it, this is name, right? That's why we have these reserved fields like name both. And that way it's going to store when it creates the contact over here, it's going to create them as John Doe. And then the system is going to split off their last name and say, hi there, John. Something like that attaches the document you've signed. You can, of course, modify this message as you see fit. And then in this case, it's going to attach a copy of the actual PDF. Down here is what happens for us. So that's it for the experience flow. In the very near future, we'll also have sequences. So if you wanted to, you could go add them to a marketing sequence, right? Which might be useful to send out a message on day 0, and then day 7, and then day 14 and 21, something like that. Oftentimes increments of 7 are helpful, because you know that is a good day for them. For that client, right? It might be something that you want to periodically stay in touch with them. In this case, I do not want this on because it's not working yet as of recording of this video, but we are in beta on it. So if you need that, by all means, reach out to us and we'll work with you to test it. For the blue box, this is what happens for you, right? Everything in the blue box is not going to be visible to the signer. So we can close this and decide, okay, if you wanted to notify multiple people, go ahead, that's fine. Just go down to email to and yo@whatever.com, right? You get the idea. And we'll have a few more options here. Right now, the HTML really is quite detailed. It has everything that we capture. And we do that intentionally so that you could look up information. You could search your email for, let's say, a given person's signature. If in case you're using your email to sign, some people are. If you wanted a plain text version, we'll even have an empty version in the near future. For people that just want the PDF and nothing else, which will happen. We'll also have in the near future, we do have it in beta, and it is already existing on the old 1.0 system, the old I/O system. We do have the ability to post to other third-party systems. So even that includes something like bridge systems like Zapier, which can then push the data into other literally thousands of other applications. And if you wanted to, post to some other CRM or something like that, you certainly could using this tool. In the tan box here, this is the actual document, and you can get to that same document just by clicking preview, but this is the same URL. If you wanted to request a signature, that'll just help you compose an email. It'll ask who is it going to go to. You can kind of play with that on your own. Tracking URL, that might be useful for embedding some hidden variables that come through, and the person can't actually see anything. The actual signer can't see anything, but we pass through some hidden variables for things like, did this person come in through the company newsletter, through the kiosk, through Facebook, through an invite from a friend. If you wanted to pass those types of variables and be able to track that, that can be useful for things like marketing information. You could also share that to Facebook, right? So in this case, we'll share it, right? If we wanted to share this on Facebook, then we could easily do that. That might be things like company, let's say you have a private company group on Facebook and you wanted to share this, then that might be an easy way to do it. You could also just, of course, copy and paste. In this case, I'm just going to hit preview. Before I do that, let me take a really quick abbreviated breeze through the advanced options. If you need a different language besides English, this is where you can do that. If you wanted a print option, this is where you could do that. If you wanted to modify the font size only within the PDF, this does not change the font size on this page. Instead, it just affects the PDF that gets generated at the end. Let's say we've got a different client that has some people that are in a sailing club, and there's a bunch of people that are a little older, and so they want a larger font. No problem. We don't care. That's fine. Whatever works for you. We want you to be happy. So if you want a large font, no problem. If you want signer authentication, that's where you could do that. The tags are not visible to the client. That's really just for you internally. You've got some privacy options. So if you want invitation only, if this is a highly sensitive contract, that might be what you do, in which case nobody will be able to see this unless you invite them expressly. Password protected, that's one password for everybody, accessible to anyone with URL, but it's not indexable. We try and block Google from indexing it. And then last, however, we don't have any control over them. So if you've linked to it expressly and there's a lot of traffic going to it, then that could be picked up by Google. That's, just be advised, right? Public and searchable online. In that case, it'll be included in your sitemap and stuff like that. And we don't try and block Google from indexing it. So for something like a waiver, that would be appropriate. For a waiver, we could probably leave it at that, because we want it to be easy to find in case somebody does accidentally go to Google and go to look for it. There's not a problem per se. If the wrong person were to sign this waiver, it's not going to get them anything. It's not going to get them invited or something like that. So save data button, that would update the top right section. High speed mode, that was designed for like a water park. They needed 1,000 signatures per day. And in that case, we won't generate a PDF unless it's actually needed, right? So in the case of the water park, if you've got a high number of signatures, then that will save you money, frankly, because we charge differently for it. And it also will make things faster because we don't generate the PDF unless it's actually needed. But if it is needed, let's say somebody came back and slipped and fell and says, hey, I didn't sign that waiver. And so we can say, oh, yes, you did. And we can have it. And here's the form that you signed. Then you would be able to go back, look up the person by name, email, phone, that kind of information, by date, and generate their actual signed doc. And the doc is smart enough to know that if you change it, so we have a complete version history. So if you change this document a month later than the person signed, we're going to use the old version. So you cannot change a document once they've signed it. That's, of course, legally important because we need to be ready to go to court at any given moment, at any given time, and defend a document and be able to prove that this person did sign this document. Here we've got a history, and this is really just version history. Anyway, if you wanted to also make a private note, you could. Then like so, that might be helpful for whoever's changing it, especially as we get into enterprise. And you've got multiple people, let's say, editing these documents. You could say, Sally changed this doc on this time at this date, and here's why. So that's the whirlwind tour of our waiver system. Once documents are signed, then they're going to, A, get emailed to the signer, B, get emailed to you typically, C, they're also stored online in your folder. And this is actually shared. This is actually a workroom shared to the other person. So in this case, we've got the actual workroom signed, and it's shared between the signers. So this can actually be really helpful for certain things like sales contracts. Let's say you're in the mortgage business and somebody has to fill out lots of different pages of paperwork, or let's say you wanted to make notes about this person, then we could, right? So here's some of the information that was captured, and we've got a time date stamp as to when it was captured, that kind of information. If I wanted to, I could also chat with this person and have notes that are either private about this person or public, that kind of thing. You get the idea. So increasingly, we're building collaboration tools, and we want this to be useful. So if you need to accomplish some objective, by all means, let us know. Hope that helps. If you have any further questions, I think we're probably in good shape. This is a good point at which for you to jump in and get your document converted and just start playing with it. And if you have any questions or you need any help, by all means, go to swiftcloud.ai/support. We've got a really powerful support system. We keep editing it, and you can search for really anything. So you want to search for receipt, just go type in receipt, and you'll probably find a whole detailed article about how to do what you want to do. And if you ask a question that we haven't answered yet, then we're going to probably make a help article and then send that to you. And that isn't personal. It's just so that we only have to answer the question once. Thanks so much.